we have this great show that deals with economics. I'm going to bring in Steve Rao, who will introduce David Walker, and there may be some other guests join us as well very shortly. But right now, I'm turning it over to Steve Rao and his great job of introducing David Walker and their great conversation.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. This is Steve Rao, the political analyst on Roku and Pot TV, and for now, the moderator of Economics Monday. We look forward to the show every Monday at 11 a.m. And as always, the guest is David M. Walker, the former Comptroller General of the United States of America for Presidents Clinton and George W. Bush, author of America 2040, and he's working on a new book on Social Security. Before we bring David on, we are today going to step back and ask ourselves a big question. Is the American economy strong, or are there vulnerabilities that we need to be paying much closer attention to? We're living through a very disruptive time through trade policy changes, AI, the changing workforce, the national debt, which we've talked about often on the show, increasing competition from countries around the world. And the question isn't simply whether the economy is doing well. The bigger question is, are we positioning ourselves to be globally competitive over the next 10, 20, or 30 years? And so we're going to start today with David Walker to address the first part of this conversation, because he and I are both only here for 45 minutes. I've also got to catch a flight out of here from RDU. But we're going to talk about, is the economy strong or fragile? And we're going to have a conversation. So David, I want to kind of set you up today for the show. Thank you for being here, and let's get started.
Well, Steve, it's good to be with you. And by the way, we can talk later. I'm going to have 2 or 3 events in North Carolina in September that you need to be aware of. But with regard to the economy, everything in the world is relative. The economy is growing moderately at the present point in time, but the worm has turned on President Trump since March. Up until March of this current year, all the major economic statistics were better for President Trump than they were when he took office. But starting in March, that changed, largely because of the Iran war, but not totally because of the Iran war. And let me give you some statistics, but even some of these, you have to end up, providing a little bit different, enhanced perspective. Real GDP growth in the economy is 1.5% for the second quarter of 2026. When he took office, it was 2.4%. Headline inflation, 3.5% as of June 2026. When he took office, it was 3%. Real wage growth, 0.1% in June 2026. When he took office, it was 1%. Unemployment, 4.1% in July 2026. When he took office, it was 4%. Labor force participation, 61.4%. When he took office, it was 62.6%. Conference Board consumer confidence, 90.8 in July 2026. When he took office, it was 104.1. But in fairness, let's go back to the inflation number. The headline inflation of 3.5% is higher than when he took office at 3%, but the average inflation rate each year during Biden was 5%. So it's down from what it was during the Biden era, but up from what it was at the beginning of him taking office in the second term. And that's primarily because of energy prices. So the bottom line is we're growing, but we're not growing at near the rate that we need to grow, and not near the rate that it was claimed that we would grow by this administration. The primary reason, I believe, is because of energy prices. But we do have other challenges. And AI is a mixed blessing. On one hand, it's going to have a significant positive impact on productivity. It's going to have a significant positive impact with regard to research. At the same point in time, it is going to be disruptive in the labor market. AI can't do emotional intelligence. AI, can't do certain things that only humans can do. But, and AI is not as good as critical thinking as humans are. But if you're in a job that all you're doing is research, you're doing things that can be replicated by AI, you're at risk. So you need to end up focusing more on the things that AI can't do as well, which is critical thinking and emotional intelligence. In addition, you have to be careful with AI because AI is incredibly fast and it's incredibly helpful too. I use it every day for research. I do not use it for writing. I think that's unethical, but I do use it for research. But sometimes it's wrong. Sometimes it gets things wrong. And so you have to have enough people, you have to have people who know enough about the topic to know when it's wrong.
Right. I mean, that's a great summation. And we got a few more questions before we bring in the panel. But I think, so right now you would still say that we're a weakening economy, right? Or that we're not getting
We're
strong.
growing slowly.
Growing slowly. Okay.
Growing at 1.5% real GDP a year. The administration wants 3+.
Okay. You mentioned energy. We've talked about the AI being a blessing and a curse. The national debt we've talked about often on the show. Do you believe that these are all vulnerabilities that are occurring at the same time? I mean, it's hard to say what's the one vulnerability, but all these things happening at the same time, is that kind of what's working against our economy here at home?
Well, you also have a demographic challenge, okay? As has been said, demographics are destiny. I mean, our birth rate is about 1.58 per female. It takes 2.1 to be able to maintain your population. We have longer lifespans as well. Immigration, we've cracked down on illegal immigration. We need to have a much more intelligent immigration policy than we have right now because we need immigration, but we need legal immigration where people can support themselves. And we need the kind of immigrants that can help us with regard to economic growth rather than drawing upon welfare systems, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. And I think that it's, all of these things happening at the same time. It's challenging. What do you think if you were advising the current president of the United States, the next president of the United States, whoever that is on the Democrat Republican side, whoever that's going to be in the Congress, and then also focusing on the governors of this country, what would be your top three kind of David M. Walker playbook to get us?
The most immediate thing on most Americans' minds is we got to wrap up this Iran situation. It's dragging out way too long. I've said before, I think that the Iranians are not operating in good faith. They're totally unrealistic as to what the United States would be willing to agree to with regard to their terms. I think it's time that we ended up hitting them very hard. And when I mean hitting them very hard, among other things, that means taking out all of their energy facilities at Karg Island. They only represent 4% of global oil. We can make up that ourselves and through others. And so that can help with regard to, prices, if you will. But it would be a tremendous hurt for them from an economic standpoint. But we need to wrap that up. Secondly, we need to resolve our issues with regard to immigration. Now that we have border security, we should be in a position to be able to do that. We need to look at ICE and look at some of their operational procedures to improve some of their operational procedures. Personally, I don't see why they need to wear masks, and they always should have body cameras on. And the last thing is by far the most important, and I've said this over and over again, not just me, but top business leaders and military leaders, we got to put our finances in order. And my next book is not just about Social Security. I lead with that. And the reason I lead with Social Security is because over 70 million people are on it right now and growing. And it's got a definitive cliff. The definitive cliff's the end of 2032. But I also get into healthcare, defense, taxes, government organization operations, political reforms, energy, environment, immigration, and education issues. All of those, we have flashing yellow or red lights that we need to come to grips with sooner rather than later. It's not going to be a big issue in the 2026 elections, but it needs to be, and I believe will be, a big issue in the 2028 elections. And I'm going to do what I can to make sure that it is.
We're going to end with the final question, and then we're going to open up the panel, trying to make good use of our time here. But I mean, this is part one, and as we do this show, David, we got one more week, and then he's going to be off for a few weeks. But when we come back, we're going to kind of continue these conversations because it is Economics Monday. Really want to focus in on the economy on the show. When you look at global let's talk about trade and tariffs, and then a little bit about innovation. So, traditionally tariffs have not worked, but this president has continued to increase tariffs, then kind of pull back. What does this do? What is our trade policy? How does this affect our economy?
Well, first you need to understand for a significant majority, let me think for a second. For, about 140 years, the United States federal government was funded primarily by tariffs. That changed in 1913 when the income tax was adopted through a constitutional amendment. And now a significant majority of our revenues are from income taxes and payroll taxes, Social Security and Medicare, if you will. In my view, tariffs should only be used in circumstances where there are unfair trade practices that are going on, and/or there are circumstances that have a national security or public health interest, where we need to make sure that we have adequate domestic and/or ally capacity to provide our needs with regard to national security and public health issues. The truth is, we are unduly reliant on China for certain critical rare earth minerals and certain other and processing of those rare earth minerals. We are unduly reliant on China for materials necessary for providing prescription drugs, and that has to change. The United States allowed too much offshoring in order to keep costs down. Starting in the 1990s, cost is important to American consumers, but national security, public health, and jobs are also important for us as well. And I think it's time for us to be able to engage in a comprehensive review and to develop a strategy that can end up helping us with regard to economic growth, individual opportunity, national security, public health, and obviously trade has a lot to do with it. And tariffs are a tool that might be used, but should only be used sparingly in the circumstances that I talked about.
Yeah, and the final thing before we bring the panel, just an observation. I think that before World War II, we had protectionism, higher tariffs, and then eventually led into the Great Depression. So I think isolationism. So kind of scary that we're seeing kind of an isolationist foreign policy now. America first. Don't worry about the rest of the world. Put up tariffs. Let's build walls. I think we can learn from the past, correct, as we look to the future.
Well, you have to learn from history and you have to learn from others. And Smoot-Hawley, which is what you're talking about, was disastrous trade policy. But I think it's important to understand, Steve, that America first doesn't mean America alone. There's no way that the United States can go it alone. At the end of World War II, we were 50% of global GDP. The dollar was as good as gold. And we were unrivaled with regard to our military and diplomatic and cultural influence around the world. That's not the case today. We're the leading superpower, but we're now about a quarter of the world's economy, down from half. We are the strongest military, but we're not unrivaled. China has come up quite a bit. We have significant diplomatic influence, but so does China. And we still have pretty unrivaled cultural influence. But it all can come apart if we don't put our finances in order, because the leading indicator on the way up and the leading indicator on the way down is economic power. It helps you on the way up. It hurts you on the way down. And if you can't put your finances in order, you will not maintain economic superiority.
That's great. On the next show, we're going to come and talk about infrastructure and innovation a little bit. I think there's a connection between immigration and innovation if it's done right. But that's a great way as we bring in the panel. You've often said that the four areas of a superpower is economic power, political power, diplomatic power, and cultural influence. And so I think we all should be concerned in America on, our political and economic power. We now have the panel. We are grateful to be. We have with us James Eade, Sasha Starr, the head of the Ukraine show, analyst on our station, Jatobi, the shy and bashful Jatobi McDuffie, just kidding, and then James Eade. Now, what I would ask today on this panel is let's, come in with some questions. The rule on the show is long as I'm the moderator is the one breath rule. Let's make a point and ask a question. So I'm going to go ahead and do round robin. We're going to start with James Eade for insights as we continue this conversation. Thank you, James, for being with us today.
You need to unmute yourself, James.
I was saying thank you for allowing me the opportunity to ask Dave this question. I know you try to be nonpartisan, but this is a question that tries to adhere to that, because no Democratic or Republican president has ever monetized the presidency the way this one has, in my opinion. And I was wondering if you shared that opinion.
President Trump not taking salary with $400,000 a year. Okay. Whether he's given charity or not, but there's clearly a number of examples where he has benefited economically from a number of actions that he's taken, whether it be the Trump coin, whether it be Trump watches, or whatever. I think, in my opinion, that is totally inappropriate and unpresidential. And this we're getting feedback. I don't know what the problem is here, but there's a difference between what is legal, what is ethical, and what is morally right. What he's doing may not be illegal. I think it's unethical. I think it's inappropriate. I don't think it gets into the moral territory. But I like to try to reach for the ceiling rather than crawl on the ground. And I would hope that my president would, whether they're a Democrat, a Republican, or independent.
One problem is that we've had 10 years of Trump now. We had Biden in the middle, but still, like, he's kind of normalized. Like, there are a certain percentage of voters who don't know how unusual his behavior is for a president.
Well, this too will pass, okay? And I think one of the things you have to be able to do, again, I try to be fact-based, nonpartisan, non-ideological, non-personal, okay? But I think the other thing that I can do, and hopefully more people can do, is I can separate between the person and the personality and the policy and results, okay? I'm a results-oriented person, right? And in some areas, he's generated very positive results. For example, the border. It was out of control, okay? And he's gotten it under control. In other areas, as I've already told you what the economic statistics are, okay? Earlier in the show, obviously the Iran situation is very problematic. While he's resolved a number of other conflicts, that's a new conflict that is turning out to be a tar baby that we need to get rid of sooner rather than later.
We're going to go to, let's go to Sasha Starr, and then we're going to go to Dr. Omar, and then back to Jacoby. I'm going to try to rotate so we all get a turn. Sasha, what are your insights? Any questions here?
Thank you. No, I've just noticed that you mentioned that one of the first things that the U.S. has to do is to finish Iranian problem. And in your opinion, the attacks on Iranian infrastructure or any other way or combination of all kinds of things may lead exactly to that effect, to advantages for the United States. On the other hand, I've heard, and from U.S. members of U.S. administration, that they are running out of ammunition and certain classes of weapons. And there was one general of Navy, Admiral probably, who had 5 or 6 war ships in Mediterranean, and they have no ammunition to fight it. And they were instrumental to shoot down the missiles that Iran was bombarding Israel. So if they don't have this anti-ballistic missiles that can shoot Iranian missiles, they have nothing to do there. In fact, they are becoming targets. So he asked permission to move all the ships from the Mediterranean elsewhere. So if there's such a situation with ammunition, and Iran knows about it, and China knows about it, and everyone in the world knows about it, and I'm pretty sure you know about it, then how realistic is your proposal to finish this business with Iran, especially now when Iran issued on all world the ultimatum to the United States that they already all about finish negotiations with Oman to split the revenue from Strait of Hormuz, and they ask for immediate repayment unless the U.S. will do certain moves like complete compensation of Iran, to freeze American presence there and actually move out of this, and many others. I don't want to spend my time to rehash it because it's been announced on Saturday at 5:00 p.m. all over the world. There is no response from U.S. whatsoever. So
First, the ships that are in the Mediterranean were primarily used to defend Israel.
Yes.
When Iran was attacking Israel. The ships that are more in harm's way are not those ships. The ships that are more in harm's way are the ones that are in the Persian Gulf. Those are the ones that are more in harm's way. They're adequately supplied right now. I'm not going to get into details with regard to ammunition. Some of that is classified information. I will tell you that we've used a lot of ammunition. I will tell you that one of the things that existed before the Iran conflict is that we needed to increase our industrial capacity to produce weapons more rapidly than we had before. Okay, there's no question about that. It's not a problem for us to take out Karg Island. We can do that in one evening, and we don't have to use a whole lot of weapons to be able to do it. I'm sure you know, Sasha, that when you hit an oil facility, it tends to have collateral impact with regard to setting explosions in other oil facilities. So we could wipe that out in one.
We can do it. And what would be the response?
And it wouldn't take much munitions.
Good.
Right?
Done. And what will be, in your opinion, Iranian response to that action?
Oh, I'm sure that they would try to do what they could. I mean, their only leverage that they have, Sasha, in my opinion, the only leverage they have is the Strait of Hormuz. That's it. Okay.
What about bombardment of the oil states in the region?
With regard to them, I understand what you're saying. That's not us. That's them. Okay.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
And we care about them. All right. Don't get me wrong. We care about them. All right.
Yes, Dave. You cared about Ukraine in 1994 with Budapest Memorandum. Yes, I know that.
Sasha,
I know that.
Sasha, you've heard me say many times that if it's not a treaty ratified by the Senate, it's not worth the paper it's written on.
Exactly, and that's what U.S. did with memorandum
exactly
signed by Trump by 17. So it's signed by Trump, but you say that it has not been ratified by Congress and Senate.
1994 was not Trump. 1994 was Clinton, and I think Clinton was a very good president. Okay. But it shows you the difference between a memorandum and a treaty. Okay. There are a number of things that the Iranians are asking for that I think are negotiable. Okay, and should be negotiable.
So why they didn't negotiate?
There are certain things that they're asking for that I think are absolutely non-starters. Okay. One of which is to pay reparations to Iran.
Why to sign?
Well, hold on. I think if they meet certain conditions, giving them access to their frozen funds, I think that's reasonable. Okay. There are certain things that I think could be part of a comprehensive deal. And, right now, my understanding is there are not direct negotiations that are going on between the United States and Iran, that there are indirect negotiations that are going on, with regard to this matter. And the big issue that everybody is concerned about the most right now is what are we going to do on the Strait of Hormuz, because that affects global energy prices. And we're not, we're affected by it, even though we don't need oil from that part of the world. But we're affected by it because it's a global market.
Yeah, Dave, you just mentioned one interesting thing, that in that memorandum of June 17th, there were certain parts that were completely non-negotiable. Yet Trump signed it. And next day he went astray with all these new formulations and demands and so on. How in a world any foe or friend can rely on an award of U.S. politicians when it's 99% at the end of the day, it's all lies and deceiving information?
Well, first, let's go back to the Budapest Agreement. The Budapest Agreement was not just the United States. It was also the United Kingdom. It was also Russia.
Agreed.
It was also Ukraine. Okay. I'll come back to where I started.
Okay.
Memorandum of understanding are only as good as the current person who signed it. They're not good beyond that. And for major activities, such as Ukrainian security, such as the Iran situation, those need to be treaties that are ratified by the U.S. Senate. And if they're not,
U.S. Senate, so U.S. Senate never authorized this war with Iran anyway. What U.S. Senate has to say anything? They have no say, they have no place, they have nothing.
Hold on.
You know that.
You know the last time Congress declared war?
When was that?
Second World War?
Second World War.
Right.
Have we had a number of conflicts since the Second World War?
Yes.
Of course.
Yeah. How about Korea? How about Vietnam? How about the first Gulf War? How about the second Gulf War? How about Afghanistan? How about, Bosnia? We didn't really have armed conflict. Okay. Although we did commit troops. I was there. How about Iran? Congress is totally inept.
Yes.
Congress,
David, I agree with you.
Hold on. Congress,
according to you, Senate can finish the war, but they're not starting the war, right?
Congress only has one express enumerated constitutional responsibility, only one. And that is to pass all the appropriations bills on time. The last time they did it was 30 years ago. They've only done it 4 times in my lifetime. It is an F-. Now, there's something called the War Powers Act, okay? And so the president has a certain amount of authority that he can use military force without Congress having to declare a war. My view is that, any time that you're engaged, like let's take Iraq as an example. We did that unilaterally. I'm talking about the second war. We did it unilaterally for the purpose of taking out the government. Okay. In my opinion, that's a perfect example of where we should have declared war, and we didn't. Okay. And it was also under false pretenses because they were not affiliated with Al-Qaeda in any way. They did not have weapons of mass destruction. That's a very different situation than Iran. Okay. And by the way, we eliminated a check and balance against Iran because Iraq and Iran were enemies, and they fought a war and they were a counterbalancing force, and so it exacerbated the situation.
Absolutely. We're going to get to Jacoby just to give his perspective, then over to Dr. Sharif. And
thanks, Sasha.
Thank you, Dave.
Sasha, thank you, and stay with us, Sasha. We really enjoy your passion on the show. We love it. Jacoby, tell us a little bit about what your thoughts are.
There's a lot of topics that we did cover, but since we want to go just straight to one, but just a quick gloss to get there. The immigration issue, we could have talked about the asinine moves on the Iran war, because this is just dumb. completely dumb because Iran didn't have any weapons of mass destruction. Iran didn't have nuclear weapons. Iran didn't have all this stuff. The Strait of Hormuz was open. All this was just a dumb move by Trump because he has his ego that he has to deal with. And then we also have to stop saying that it's just about oil. There's more things that come through the Strait of Hormuz that affect us than just oil. And then on top of that, we have to also stop isolating ourselves because when we talk about America alone, when we say, well, it's only us, we're not affected by it. Well, Dr. Sharif is coming up next, and Bangladesh is running out of power. Are we wanting Dr. Sharif to sit there and starve with no power? No, that's not what we are about. So we have to stop the idea that we're so alone. We don't need the strait. We need it, just as everybody else needs it.
We're all
It can cause the problem. So to get to the point that I wanted to get to is one of the things that you said at the start is the canary in the coal mine. You had said the falling of the dollar or the dollar value is the canary in the coal mine, talking about how the economy is. Well, the dollar is, ever since Trump came into office, the dollar went down. We're now at a 2-month low with the dollar value. I think last week it fell against Japan. I think now Japan's has fallen a little bit, but right now it's at a low. What does that tell us about our economy, especially coming off of a poor July report, a revised down report on jobs before that? Matter of fact, we pretty much we didn't gain any jobs last year based on the reports, and we considerably lost jobs over the whole time since Trump's been in office. So what does that truly tell us about our economy?
First, you have to lift the hood, as Ross Perot would say, who was a friend of mine. May God rest his soul. And you have to look underneath, okay? And you will find when you do that a significant percentage of the lost jobs are government jobs, okay, not private sector jobs. In addition to that's a fact. And then
but just to push back on that,
let me finish.
Okay,
I'll let you finish. You let me finish. And AI is having an impact, Jacoby. There's no question about that. As I said, AI is a double-edged sword. It's having a significant impact to improve productivity, but it's also having a disruptive impact with regard to employment. And by the way, coming back to what I said before, America first does not mean and should not mean America alone. We are affected by what's going on with regard to the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz, because these are global markets, whether it's energy prices, whether it's fertilizer prices or other things that come out of there. We're affected by that. We may not need that supply, but we're affected by the pricing. Whereas countries like Bangladesh and many other countries are not only affected by the pricing, they're affected by the lack of supply, and they're the ones that get hurt more. And obviously, the people that are providing these resources, the Gulf states, as was mentioned before, Sasha, we talked about what if you end up attacking the energy facilities? They're affected too, okay, because that could affect how much supply there is, not just the transitory. Last thing, let me mention, Sasha, there's a member of Congress who's a good friend of mine who's from Ukraine, okay? Her name is Victoria Spartz from Indiana. Yeah. Look her up. And let me just tell you, she's got so much energy. Now I know why the Russians are having so much problem, okay? Because if you give her a rifle and put her on the line, the Russians are in trouble. So I can imagine how the men are.
I would like to bring some very interesting news that I just heard just a half an hour ago. Ukrainians disclosed now why American refused to provide licenses to do for Ukraine interceptors for Patriots. Because Ukrainians are very good in technology, and they will immediately make these interceptors 5 times cheaper than United States and the same quality as United States. So therefore, this Raytheon and others, they will lose their supremacy in that regard. But Ukrainians already started to make their own interceptors. So this strategy of Pentagon asking for $500 billion there and another $2 trillion over there and over here. This is money laundering, nothing else.
So real quick,
Real quickly, want to hear from Dr. Sharif and then back to Rick and then back to Joey. Joey, make a quick point. I want to get to Dr. Sharif. Go ahead.
okay.
No, I was just going to say we just have to stop that saying that only government jobs lost. That is a
Not only. No, I didn't say
no,
that.
wait. Or government jobs were lost. We have to stop that as well, because that's another otherism. Because these government jobs that you're talking about are the same government jobs that are nurses, that are the same government jobs that are police officers. Those are all government jobs as well. That same cashier that's working at, those are government jobs. They also pay for things. These are individuals that are now going to be looking for jobs, looking for work, hitting the unemployment market, actually creating another problem. So when we say government jobs, trying to isolate it in otherism and saying, yay, government jobs are lost, that is wrong to do, because those are the same, those people are also people in this country that are working. And to just point out, you just talked to, when you and Sasha were having the banter back and forth, that goes to my point about it being this global market, and we have to stop the isolation, because in India, for example, there's a huge tech market that the U.S. depends on, including U.S.-born companies like Hewlett Packard, which uses the outsourcing to India. Well, what happens when they run out of energy? We're not going to be able to replace that in the U.S. All these industries. There's no major industry right now that is bound to one country. None.
Okay.
Let's go. One thing Bezos said yesterday on CNN is the whole reason we're going to space. We can have data centers in
You need to
space.
get closer, Steve. We can barely hear.
Jeff Bezos yesterday on CNN said that we can go to space, more energy, to get more water, have data centers in space. Kind of find that interesting, of kind of the space war that's taking place between Musk and Bezos. But that's a conversation for another time of why we'd want to go to the moon again. Real quickly to Dr. Sharif, and I want to hear from Rick, and then Dr. James Eade. We got about 8 more minutes left. Dr. Sharif, what is your global perspective on this?
Thank you. This is very interesting discussion when you discuss about the U.S. perspective, especially for tariff, immigration, economics, because country like Bangladesh, we are very small, but we have heavily strong involvement with the U.S. economy. Let's say our garments industries. Bangladesh is the second largest countries who actually send our garments products to USA. So that's why this tariff actually create a heavily impact in Bangladesh. Second important aspect is this. Definitely, I agree with Honorable David Walker regarding this war in between Iran and USA and Israel, because it's heavily creating problem for energy. Even though in my house I cannot get enough energy sources for cookings or energies or many more things. And third important aspect is immigrations. I think that how this immigrations and other things changes. Definitely Bangladesh is under this 50 country or 75 countries list. So our B1, B2 visa under bond. Then students, many of the students, they go to USA for higher study purpose. Even though our Bangladesh education system heavily supported by or integrated by our syllabus, everything followed by USA. So this is very complex things, like some point Bangladesh also part of globalizations. But now we look like that USA nationalisms heavily growing, and that's why even though AI or other things is coming through this nationalism issues, creating a lot of barrier for open society, barrier for business, and so on. So I learned to know more from Honorable David Walker. Do you think this is the transition moment from globalization to nationalism, or I don't know? It's look like we are in the complex situation right now.
Well, my personal view is that the United States cannot afford to go it alone. It cannot afford to be isolationist, that we need to have alliances from an economic standpoint, from a national security standpoint, from a foreign relations standpoint. I think they're more important, not less important, I've told you before that with regard to tariffs, I believe they should only be used when there are unfair trade practices and or there are national security or public health issues. I think that there are circumstances in which some of our allies have not kept up their side of the bargain. An example would be NATO, where NATO has not been living up to its responsibility for its own collective defense, and it has been unduly reliant upon the United States. And the United States, quite frankly, needs to shift a lot of its attention to the Pacific. And that means that NATO needs to stand up more to be able to protect its own interest in Europe. And the United States also has its own financial problems, not that other European countries don't, but we have our own financial problems that we need to start dealing with. And we have some domestic challenges that we have to deal with. So those are just a few thoughts. Rick, you haven't had a chance to speak.
Yeah, so we got to look at both of Trump's terms in office about jobs. So during his first term, because of a disastrous 2020 and COVID, Trump left office down 2 2/3 million jobs. In the past 15 months, now there's a thing that's been going on. It's been going for a while, but it got severe under Biden, continues under Trump, which is AI chews up jobs. But then on top of it, Trump adds tariffs. And in the 15 months since Trump has put out tariffs, the U.S. has only added 336,000 jobs. That's down 88% from the average from 2010 through 2025, not counting the COVID year. So, it's not all Trump's fault, but Trump hasn't done anything to really much to help. Now, yeah, the one thing Trump has done is he did shut down the border. And he's also benefiting from a couple other long-term trends. Fentanyl, OD deaths are way down. And one reason is all the people who are going to OD are already dead. Another thing is crime is down in a long-term trend, and he's going to claim it's him. But no, this is stuff the decline in crime started 30 years ago. And then there was another decline where it spiked under COVID, and it's been going down since then. Neither fentanyl nor crime is really Trump's doing, but he's going to say, "Yeah, I did that."
Well, understand this: Trump cannot stand for re-election. Obama can't run for re-election again. In 2 years and 5 months, we will have a new president, and our system is stronger than any particular individual in any particular political party. I'm going to do everything I can to advocate for meaningful reforms in a whole range of areas and to make them a key part of the 2028 election. A number of these issues should be talked about in 2026. Iran obviously is. Energy prices obviously are being talked about. But a lot of the things that are going to be in the book that I've got coming out in January aren't being talked about to the extent they need to be. They need to be on the run up to the 2028 election. I'm going to do what I can to make sure they are.
Can't wait. I know David has to leave in 1 minute. Final word for James before I close this out, and then we're going to continue for a few minutes. Hey, James, any final thoughts?
And maybe Mark take over. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think we have a global marketplace, but what we need is a global community. And so this isolationist idea, and it's surfaced throughout our history, and it's never done well. And we don't want to fall into that trap again, but we have. And so Dr. Sharif's comment about the nationalist trend, that's not just in the United States, it's also in Europe. It's there's a lot of countries that are thinking that what does it mean to be French? What does it mean to be the United States? But the United States, we're all from someplace else. So what we need to do is fix the legal immigration system.
Yeah,
and pour some resources into that.
Stay tuned.
All right.
Well, David, we want to thank you. We want to be sensitive to your time. What I will say as I close this out for the next show is that, it's easy to look at job numbers, the GDP number, but really, the conversation we're having on this show is the foundation of our economy, whether it's innovation, AI, infrastructure, energy, workforce, and of course, fiscal responsibility, global competitiveness, and also foreign policy. All these things are interconnected, and they impact what I call our national security, which we often would think, nuclear war is coming in on the United States, but now national security could be economic insecurity, which is bleeding into kind of what's going on politically. But that's my final take before we wrap it up on the show. But David, thank you. We'll see you next week, and it's an honor to moderate the show part-time with such a great leader. Thank you. Okay, folks, welcome back. We're going to spend a few more minutes here, and I'm going to, to begin this kind of free-round conversation. That's really what I've been reading a lot recently, books from journalists and looking at, all the different levels of things. But what I find interesting is that all of these things seem to be interconnected. When I was growing up at Emory, I graduated in the 90s, 92. You had global conflict, Gulf War. You had the president come on maybe every now and then, George H.W. Bush. And then things would kind of simmer down to normalcy. And then you would hear from the president, you'd hear about the Gulf War. But now it just seems we have a lot of these issues that are interconnected. What's happening in Iran and Ukraine affects energy prices. What China's doing with AI affects us here at home in terms of how much AI is being used, how competitive. It also affects our energy, the use of data centers. So I would love to be a student in a political science class today. My niece is starting Carolina this week, and I've asked her kind of sit in on a class because I'd love to kind of see what is the political scientist telling these young students today of the world that they're going into, because it's so different than the world that I went into 35 years ago. Now we're leading more to an isolationist foreign policy, turbulence all over the world. So that's kind of like I'm going to throw that out there today just to get your all's perspectives on that issue. So go ahead. Anyone want to chime in? Sasha, start.
There is only one issue that can galvanize a democratic movement, and it's not climate change. It's economic inequality of America that is reached enormous proportions. If you take, for example, a medium or even full-size large business, and you will see that CEO or president of the company earns 150 times more than average worker there. He does not create a product or property worth 150 times more than any average worker in the same business. In Sweden, he can earn 7 times as much as average worker, 9 times. In some other countries, up to 20 times. Now, here in America, it's 150 and more, and these people are not paying their fair taxes. They have army of tax consultants and tax lawyers of all kinds of things that they don't pay their taxes. Biggest US corporations like Microsoft and others are all domesticated in Ireland, where they pay only 10% taxes. So what use of United States and its people to have all these multi-trillion dollars corporations? Zero, nothing. So all system has to be completely reworked. That's what there is now. It doesn't work.
Sasha, I'm going to just interject here, and I'm going to throw it back to the audience, trying to be a better moderator. But, I think that's a good point. I mean, I think that's what's driving a lot of the democratic socialism we're seeing is, the fact that more and more of the money is being put in the hands of less and less a percent of the population. I mean, if you go back to Carnegie, Vanderbilt, John D. Rockefeller, this is a time when 3% of the GDP was owned by 3 or 4 entrepreneurs. I think you could say the same thing today between Zuckerberg, Sam Altman, Elon Musk, and I can't remember one other one. You've got an Anthropic. You've got basically these entrepreneurs, less profits coming in. People are homeless. They're paying more for healthcare. They're paying more for groceries. They're paying more for energy. And hence, you've got democratic socialists coming on. I mean, I think that's where we're headed. I think it's created a vacuum of economic opportunity for the Democrats to come in and say. Now the question is, who are they going to get? Are they going to win the midterms? And are they going to find someone that can win the presidency?
Steve, this is the only one topic what Democrats need to win 26 elections, 28 elections, and another 10 times elections. This is the only single topic what you need. You don't need nothing else. You don't need climate change. You don't need all this social improvements. You have just one. Because if you solve this problem, you automatically will solve any other problem.
Are you saying the economy's stupid? Are you
Speaking
saying
of
the
that thing,
economy's stupid? It's just the economy.
Yeah,
Just really quickly, Jacoby and everybody else, I just popped in. I was listening the whole time. By the way, my definitely Steve, my minor was poli-sci, and this notion that this conversation is new. This notion of us being involved in conversations that are world impactful, that's nothing new. I mean, I remember, and I know Jim remembers this as well, when apartheid was a conversation and all along those lines, and that was during the 80s, and we were saying how the conversation around apartheid would impact not just the U.S., but the world economy, and even Vietnam, and a number of other things that I can say that I remember being conversations when I was sitting in my poli-sci courses. And like I said, that was my minor, whereas journalism was my major and everything like that. So I know that this notion, and even the notion of the economic divide, I mean, one of my relatives is actually involved in the whole reparation conversation, and that is Sandy Darity, who's involved with the African-American reparation notion of us getting reparations. So, and he's been doing this for decades. So this notion that this is a new concept, I think, is unfair and everything along those lines, because even the economic inequality has been going on for decades as well. So I do think that we need to find solutions. There's no doubt about that. But this notion that we are kind of gaslighting that this is a new problem, that's a misnomer in my mind, because this has been going on for a while. I mean, and definitely, I was also hoping to sit in at some point in my nephew's classes, because he is going to be majoring in poli-sci at UNCG, and as a matter of fact, he'll be going next week and everything like that. So I've been asked Julius if I can sit in on one of his classes, like you asked your relative, but I think I will do that at some point or another, because he will be studying poli-sci with the hopes of being an activist lawyer and everything like that. But a lot of these conversations, even what I was hearing you talk to David Walker about, and others talking about, are things that I have heard for decades. One of the things that I've said before is that some of our great leaders, whether it was Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois, or whether it was Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, and yes, I am using African-American examples and everything, I think that they would be vastly disappointed that the same conversation that they were having when they wrote their books are the same conversations that are going on now and everything like that, because they would have thought that we would have come much further than we have come.
Although I got rid of my World is Flat book. I think we can all understand that. I've been going through getting rid of old books and saw the old Friedman thing. I'm like, okay, I think that point's already been made. We know the world isn't flat, for God's sakes.
Well, there's another thing that doubling down on what Sasha was saying. There's the disconnect between Main Street and Wall Street. And so Wall Street can be doing very well, and companies can be making tremendous amounts of revenue, but the people on Wall Street are feeling the pinch at gas prices when they try to refuel their cars. They're feeling it in the grocery stores. You know, if products aren't available, for one, and sometimes they're more expensive than they used to be. So these are the things that are hitting Main Street, the average U.S. citizen. And the U.S. citizen has one power and one power only, and to vote. And so go out and vote in these midterms and throw these bums out and see if we can do this. Because what I double down on what Dave was telling us. You know, what's right about this country can fix what's wrong about this country. And it's hard turn to the hard right. And now the pendulum is swinging. We're seeing this democratic socialism, and Trump is using the word communism. You know, but really what we need is the center left and the center right to coalesce, and then that's what makes this country great. Get the extremes out.
Sorry. I've got to lead into that as well as something that Jacoby did this weekend and everything along that line. Because I know that next week we're going to be talking about innovation and the impact of innovation on the economy. So I was just curious, because I was not able to make it because we had a economic event at HTAS that I was going on Saturday, and then Sunday I was just busy in general and everything like that. But Jacoby, you did a Future Connect event, which is an innovation event, and all along those lines. So I just wondered if you could share a little bit with us. I know it's a global show and everything, but it is something that folks need to be knowing knowing about even globally and how that went, because you did that this weekend. And that leads into what Steve wants to do next week when we're talking about innovation, because you had an innovation event this past weekend. I did see your Facebook post and regretted that I was not able to make it, but we did have a HTAP Business Expo that Coco Drip was doing at that same time. So just your thoughts around the importance of innovation, because I know that that's something that Steve is big on and something that will be our conversation on economics next Monday.
I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm looking forward to having that conversation. And I mean, I think it's we're going to be talking about before. I'm going to close out here because I gotta catch a flight out here. I'm going to stop a little bit early today, but I think we want to talk about innovation as it relates to AI and this whole balance of jobs being taken away faster than we can replenish them. At the same time, increases in productivity. And what is that meaning? We also want to look at it as job creation, immigration to innovation. Recruiting the best and brightest minds in the world does correlate to job creation. We often forget that 44% of the Fortune 500 in the United States were founded by immigrants. So are we going to remain the destination in the world where the best and brightest can come and start their ideas? And I think that's kind of interesting. And then, piggyback into kind of like global competitiveness, because, United States, 250 years strong, still say we're the strongest economy, or, one of the strongest leading countries in the world, military powers as well. But who else has got our back? I mean, who's chasing us? Is it China? Is it India? What are they doing with innovation? I think that's a very interesting conversation to have, just in terms of India's rise over the last 9 years from 9th economy in the world to now the 3rd fastest growing economy. Where is their role in all of this? How is China looking at this? I think these are all situations that we have to take.
Steve, for the last several months on this show, there was discussion of U.S. deficit, the debt,
Right.
$40 trillion,
Right.
and some other secondary issues. Absolutely no result, absolutely not a single idea as what to do with that. So Medicare will be done in 3 years, and this other stuff in 5 years, and this is growing from 40 to 50 trillion dollars. And you know what? You're taking away attention from economic inequality. This is the only one topic that matters. All the rest, climate change, the U.S. deficit, doesn't matter at all. So don't dilute your own message. The Democrats' message has to be economic inequality. It's more than enough to win next 10 years of elections.
Well, folks, I've got to wrap it up. That's the way, as my hero Walter Cronkite said when I was a kid, I always dreamt of being a journalist, so maybe it's coming true. And that's the way it is. August 10th. 2026 in a turbulent world. This is Steve Rao on Economics Monday signing off. We will see you tomorrow on Ukraine Show with Shasha Star, World Politics, and I'll try to make an appearance on World Edition. Thank you all for the show. This has been great. Send us your ideas, and we want to have a conversation on how we can continue to get better on informing all people of all parties across this country and across the world of what the issues are. Thank you all. See you next week.
See you. Bye-bye.